One minute it a celebratory playoff win, the next Sophie Cunningham, injured in a leg brace, literally does vibe in on the sidelines, is being confronted by an aggressive security guard like she just tried to storm the court and dunk on someone. Let's just cut to the chase. This wasn't just a bad look, this was a full-blown, public meltdown by the WNBA, his inner machinery, and somehow Sophie became the face of it again. Because there's one thing Liga consistent about, it's punishing the loud, proud, and popular women who don't toe the line. So here's how it all unraveled: one awkward stare down, one viral clip, and one very badly timed flex of power at a moment that should have been pure joy. If you're here for the real story and not to filter version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. You're in the arena. The Indiana Fever just pulled off a dramatic when the crowd going wild, players or beaming confetti is practically any air, and on the sidelines Sophie Cunningham is celebrating with her team. She's not even playing, she's injured, but she's there for the vibes, for the support, for the sisterhood. Right enter one extremely actually security guard who apparently didn't get the memo that this was not the time to start policing joy. Sophie's clapping, cheering, same as everyone else, and out of nowhere she's approached, cornered, and checked like she's I'm kind of threat to public safety. It wasn't just awkward, it was hostile, and yes, it was caught on camera, every second of it. Cue the chaos with in hours. The clip with viral fans were furious. Hashtag Free Sophie was trending. Comments sections were lit up like a 4th of July firework finale. And for good reason, because while Sophie was being reprimanded for smiling too hard, showing too much passion, her teammates Katie and Clark, Chloe B.Y., the whole crew were celebrating exactly the same way. But they weren't confronted, they weren't checked, they weren't made feel like they didn't belong. So what was a difference? Let's be real, people saw the clip, and they saw a pattern, because this was an isolated moment. It was the latest in a long string of microaggressions, power plays, and double standards at players like Sophie Cunningham. No way to well. And where do you think it was racially charged, politically motivated, or just plain bad judgment? One thing's crystal clear: this wasn't about security, it was about control, and maybe that would be less disturbing if it didn't keep happening to the same kind of players, the loud ones, the proud ones, the ones who don't shut up and smile for the cameras. Sophie Cunningham didn't ask for this kind of spotlight, but she sure as hell knows how to hold it. Let's rewind just a little. Sophie's been a polarizing figure in the WBB for a minute now. She's outspoken, confidence, and totally unbothered by the pressure to tone it down, which naturally means she's been getting side-eye by league officials, media narratives, and yes, the occasional Twitter troll. She's not Caitlin Clark, America's favorite media darling. She's not Angel Reese playing a PR game like a season that Sophie Cunningham plays with her heart on her sleeve and speaks with it too, and the league doesn't always know what to do with that kind of energy. Instead of celebrating it, they seem to suppress it, police it, and when it gets too bright, they dim the lights. So when she gets singled out again for doing literally nothing wrong, people notice. Because of it was about protocol, then where would the confrontations for everyone else celebrating? If it was about safety, then why was an injured player being targeted like a security risk? You tell me. The moment turned what should have been a heartwarming, high-building victory into a full-on PR does. After and the WNBA radio silence, no statement, no clarification, no apology, just vibes, bad ones, and of course the fans didn't let it slide. This wasn't just about one confrontation. It became a symbol of everything that's been simmering under the surface for years: the uneven treatment of players, the murky enforcement of rules, the glaring favoritism, and the sense that if you're not perfectly marketable, you're expendable. Now here's where it gets even more ironic: Sophie's popularity is booming. She that the following the engagement, the personality. She's the kind of player who brings fans and keep them watching and gives a league flavor. But instead of nurturing that, the league keeps putting her in a penalty box, both literally and metaphorically. It's like they're afraid of her, or worse, embarrassed by. Fire as of standing up for yourself and being real is some kind of liability. Spoiler alert, it's not as what fans love. But apparently not everyone got the memo. Let's talk optics, because as Ensign wasn't as a bad moment, it was a reputation or crack in the foundation the leagues going to grow, try and pull in casual fans, try and make his mark in an ultra-competitive sports landscape. And this is where goes viral, a player getting aggressively policed for carrying. Do you think that helps? It sends the exact opposite message. The WNBA claim to stand for empowerment, visibility, and clue 70. Not when you're picking and choosing which players get to express themselves without consequences, not when outspoken women keeping framed as problems instead of assets. And the worst part, this could have been handled so easily. A quick apology, a reassessment of security protocol, a statement of from Ming player support. But no, instead the league just let the moment spiral, lead the conversation get hijacked by drama, let Sophie twist in the wind, while fans to the damage control for them. And if you're wondering how Sophie handled it, with way more grace than she had to. She meltdown, she did. Rant, she kept a professional, because she knows the game both on and off the court. And she knows it, every move she makes as being watched under a microscope. But let's not pretend that's normal or fair. This is a player who's given her all to the sport, who shows up even when she can physically play, who's up, Porter teammates, hypes her fans, and lives the culture the WNBA says it wants to build. But when she does that, she gets treated like an intruder. Make it make sense. And here's where things get real. If the WNBA kids alienating its own stars, especially the ones with real voices, real followings, and real staying power, it's a lose more than just PR points. It's going to lose trust. Fans are already skeptical. Every time something like this happens, it chips away at the credibility, the transparency, the vibe of the whole league. You want casual fans, stick around, maybe don't go viral for harassing your injured players. You want to build a legacy, maybe support the people building it for you. But hey, what are we? No, we're just the ones buying the tickets, watching streams, twin the highlights, and offending the players when the league stays quiet. At the end of the day, this wasn't as a security guard stepping out of line, it was a system showing and cracks, and once again Sophie Cunningham's did in the middle of it, not by choice, but by default, because when you refuse to shrink yourself to fit the narrative, the spotlight doesn't always feel like a compliment. Sometimes it feels like a warning. So what happens next? Will the league addresses, or will a gas lead the most and into oblivion, like so many before, would embrace the power of his diverse, dynamic, complicated stars, or keep trying to sanitize him into bland mascot for a brand that's still figuring itself out? We're watching, remembering, and we're not buying silence anymore. Sophie might have been confronted, but she's not the one who looked weak in that moment. The lead did, the guard did, the silence did. Because here's the thing about trying to silence someone who already has a platform, it usually backfires. So to the WNBA, maybe next time let your stars shine, all of them, even the ones who don't play by your score. Ripped. And everyone watching, what do you think was as a one-off misstep, or a sign of something deeper? Should the league step in with accountability, or is already too late to rebuild that trust? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into the madness behind headlines, and remember, in a world full of drama, we bring the receipts every single time. The league has always had a complicated relationship with its own stars. They want players who are fierce, outspoken, marketable, and entertaining. but only on a league's terms. And when a player like Sophie Cunningham starts checking all those boxes without checking, and for permission suddenly, she's disruptive suddenly, she is problematic suddenly, she's a security risk seriously. Let's talk about the optics of that, because here you have an injured player in a visible leg brace on the sideline supporter team during a high-stakes playoff game. She's not instigating anything. She's not crossing any boundaries. She's doing what literally every supportive teammate does, cheering, hyping, being part of the moment. And then a security guard steps in like she's about to charge a court, like she's about to launch yourself into the post-game handshake line on one. Make it make sense, because even without the social media backlash, even without the trending hashtags and the compilation videos and the call-out threads, it already looked bad, like really bad, the kind of bad it makes Van go, wait, what's really going on here? And that question, that's the problem, because once fans start asking that, it doesn't stop at Sophie. They start looking at it, writhing. They start noticing which players get promoted, which ones get the glossy and spots, which ones in the highlight reels, the interviews, the merge drops, and which ones get conveniently cropped out. The pattern get harder and harder to ignore. And you better believe fans are connecting the dots, because this is just about one player being disrespected. It's about the rules being enforced based on who you are, not what you do. Think about it. When Caitlin Clark throws a tantrum mid-game, she's passionate. When Angel Reese trash talks, she's competitive. But when Sophie Cunningham claps a little too loud while sitting on the sidelines, now we got a situation. So what are we doing here? Is this a league that actually wants personality, or one that only wants certain personalities? Because if it's the latter, then let's just call what is curated chaos the kind where the drama is okay. As long as if it's the storyline, as long as the right people are in the spotlight. But the second someone like Sophie steps out the pre-approved box, suddenly she's difficult, suddenly the narrative shifts, suddenly she's not a hero, she's a distraction. That's the word they always use, isn't it? Distraction code for she's not playing a game you want to play. And here's where it get extra twisted, because a league needs players like Sophie, especially now with the WNBA getting more attention than ever, with new fans tuning in, new investors watching, the audience is forming opinions in real time. The league needs personality, it needs authenticity, it needs women who aren't afraid to be fully unapologetically themselves. But instead of embracing that, it's still and his outdated game of favoritism and selective branding, and when that game goes public, like it did in this confrontation, is not just a bad moment for the player, it's a bad look for the whole league. Because here's the reality, the WNBA is fighting for its place in a crowded sports world. It's climbing for sure, but not all the way up yet. And when your brand is still fragile, every scandal matters, every video clip gets scrutinized, every controversy tells a story, and story this one told, it was ugly. It said we police our stars differently. It said if you don't fit the mold, you don't get the same respect. It said we'll let you hype up the league, but the second you make as uncomfortable your liability, that's the kind of message that doesn't turn fans off, it makes them leave, because of the players themselves aren't protected if they can even celebrate. When without getting treated like security threat, then what do we really supporting? And let's talk about the silence from the league, because that was maybe the most deafening part. There was no clear statement, no acknowledgement of how the confrontation looked, no assurance the fans at this wouldn't happen again, just static. And when you leave a silence like that, people will fill it in for you. Some filled it with anger, others with conspiracy, most is filled it with disappointment, because it felt like yet another moment where the league had a chance to do the right thing and chose not to. And yes, Sophie's used to it. This isn't our first time being treated Differently, she's been getting side-eyed since college the second she started speaking up, playing with swagger, and refusing to play it safe. The system marked her as too much, too loud, too opinionated, too hard to control. But here's the kicker, she's still here, still showing up, still drawing fans, still making headlines good and bad, and through all of it she stayed unbothered now, because she doesn't care, but because she knows who she is, and maybe that's the real threat, because the more you look at it, the more becomes clear this wasn't about security at all. It was about sending a message, a little stay in your place moment that backfired spectacularly. Because Sophie didn't shrink, she and clap back with drama. She let the clip speak for itself, and it did. It spoke volumes. So, where do we go? Go from here. What's next? The league has decision to make. Does it keep pretending this was just a misunderstanding, a rogue security guard, a one-time glitch in the system? Or does it finally confront the deeper issues, the favoritism, the silencing, the subtle policing of personality that's been happening for years? Because it's not just Sophie, it's every player who's been asked to tone it down, every woman who's been told she is too loud, too emotional, too difficult, too much. It's every fan who saw that clip and thought they'll treat it like that. Would they do to me? This incident should have been a rallying point, a chance at a lead to show stand with players, not over them. Instead, it became a symbol of everything that's still broken. But maybe that's what makes Sophie's story so powerful, because even when the system tried to shut her down, even when its security guard literally stepped interface, she didn't flinch, she didn't fold. She showed what it looks like to own your voice in a league that sometimes seems scared of it. And in doing that, she reminded us all why this matters. This is into sports, is not just drama. It's about visibility, about voice, about power. It's about whether women can really be themselves, the highest levels of competition, or there's still a glass ceiling made of invisible rules and unwritten expectations. So to Sophie, keeping you to the WNBA, do better. And to the fans, we've got the receipts. We thought all were not forgetting because of the league. Want to grow, it can to sell as highlights and hope. We ignore the low points and has to earn our trust, earn our loyalty. And that starts with treating every player like they matter, even the ones who clap too hard. The league's silence didn't just leave room for speculation, it invited it. Fans weren't just as skin questions anymore, they were drawing conclusions, and the overwhelming vibe. Sophie's not the one out of pocket here, she's just the one who happened to get caught in the crosshairs as time. And we have to talk about what that moment really meant, because of security guard's step into Sophie Cunningham wasn't just about optics or overreaction, was it? Random mix-up in post-game energy. It was symbolic. It was a physical embodiment of everything the WNBA still hasn't figured out how to manage: power, personality, and presence. Sophie wasn't storming the court. She wasn't breaking protocol. She wasn't out here trying to start a brawl. She was this visible. Divisible apparently, because in this league being loud and unapologetic still makes you a target. And it's not even about whether you're liked or disliked, it's about whether you're controllable. And that's the part the league keeps fumbling. Because let's be honest, this was a golden opportunity, the kind of organic viral moment that could have been flipped into a message about unity, resilience, team spirit. They could have stepped in and said, you know what, that wasn't right, Sophie, his family, and we protect our own. But instead, crickets. And that silence that became its own message. It said, you're on your own. And honestly, that hits harder than any confrontation ever could, because when your only doesn't back you up, when it don't even bother to say your name in the aftermath, how are you supposed to trust that they've got your back when things really go sideways? It's giving performative. It's giving selective loyalty. It's giving way. We only care and cameras do, and Sophie, she need to say anything her fans that the talking for the reaction wasn't disallowed, it was pointed, it was emotional, and it wasn't just about Sophie being disrespected, it was about what that disrespect represented. It was a slap in the face to every fan who believes in authenticity, to every player who's ever been told to tone it down, to every woman who's ever been labeled too much just for showing up fully. And look, if the WNBA want to be taken seriously on a national global scale, it can afford to keep fumbling moments like this, because this was a mid-season flop or an awkward press conference. This was during the playoff, the moment when emotions run high, when fans are locked in, when the stakes are at their absolute peak. And instead of riding the wave of excitement, the league or drag for treating one of its own like a trespasser, it's like building a fire and then tossing water on your own spark. What part of that makes sense? And the worst part, the damage is done publicly. It's not something you can walk back in a boardroom or patch up a memo. It's out there. The clip lives on, the silence lives on, the questions they live on. And here's the thing, the league still doesn't seen on this. Then this isn't the kind of drama people forget to sticks, because Sophie Cunningham now carries at Momo with her, and whether the league ever dresses it or not, fans will every game she plays, every time she gets hyped on the bench, every time she so much as raises an eyebrow, people will remember. That's how reputations are. None official statements, but in moments it gets shared and rishered and mean and did. And for better or worse, Sophie's moment is now part of the WNBA story, whether they like it or not. But let's not forget who we're talking about here. This is Sophie Cunningham. She doesn't flinch, she doesn't fold. She thrives in tension. She's been pushing back against expectations our whole career and still coming out on top. So no, she doesn't need saving. She doesn't need a PR campaign. She doesn't even need a league-issued apology. What she does need, and what fans are demanding, is fairness, consistency, respect. Because a second the league starts shooting at stars like liabilities instead of as it is already losing the plot, you don't punish personality, you market it. You don't confront your injured players on the sidelines, you celebrate their commitment to the team. You don't stay silent when the whole internet is asking questions. You show up, say something, and make it right. But again, none of that happened here, and now the WNBA level with a very different problem than the one they started with, because now it's not just about what happened to Sophie Cunningham, it's about what the lead chose not to do afterward, and that's silence. Dad or echo far longer than a post-game celebration ever would, because fans are watching now, not just the games, but the choices, the reactions, the patterns, and of the WNBA wants to build a lasting legacy, one that actually empowers women, one that truly supports authenticity. Go to have to reckon with this moment, because you can't build a league on empowerment and then craw